Good afternoon. A very large audience today. I hope that they're all watching at home, but we certainly have some of our regulars and even some folks who haven't been able to make it very much, and we're happy to have all of you. This is the November Curriculum and Instruction meeting, and my last committee meeting as an elected official. I wholeheartedly want to say that this has been a very enjoyable experience, and I have been very overwhelmingly pleased at the kinds of thinking and the kinds of reflection you have done on the things that have come before this. You know, when you have people that aren't on your staff and that they're all good people, but you have no idea, I'll be very candid with you, what you're going to get. And I got very lucky in getting all of you, and including some of the people who aren't here, because the level of engagement in the discussions and the insights from a point of view of a parent or a teacher that would be different than I would have perhaps has been invaluable. And I want to take this moment to thank each and every one of you. And those of whom who couldn't make it today, I'm thanking you as well. You take time out of busy schedules to be here, and I know that. And I know that all of you are not sitting at home reading a book that you've always wanted to get to, but you came here anyway. I also want to remind everybody who's listening that our meetings, our agendas, and all the materials are online. And you can find that at achieve.lausd.net and then the / and then CIC for Curriculum Instruction Committee. I say that because really we've covered a lot of really interesting topics, and we've had a lot of great presenters. And I know that everybody's busy and couldn't be here or couldn't even watch it live. And so I hope that we're going to find our office as we leave are going to list for our social media resources that people can have, and this will be one of the resources that they can find out more about curriculum and instruction in our district by going to the topic. This afternoon, we will focus on one of the initiatives that for me personally has been the most important as a school board member, and that is community schools. Over the years, since the first community schools resolution passed in 2017, our district and labor partners have been honing how we can engage with community and families to really share decision-making deeply, to support our students fully. And now I think we are ready to delve into how teaching and learning in community schools can be transformative. I authored a resolution that passed this last September called the Supporting Meaningful Teaching and Learning in the Community Schools Initiative. And what it calls for is to permit up to 10 schools, and I think there will be 10 because several schools have already told me they're applying, to do just that. I've asked the team today to describe to us how the resolution aligns with the California Community Schools Framework. What is work that is already underway, and how the district and the Community Schools Steering Committee will implement the resolution. Now, we know, since it just passed, you don't have the answers to every piece of this, so we're not expecting, oh, here's the details, we've got it all worked out. But you know what we're looking for. The big picture, how you think we're going to get there, what things need to happen in order, where would we start, how we do this. This is a collaborative process, and it should not be rushed. At the same time, we're eager to begin this experiment so we can learn how to apply successes to a broader group of schools. So let's get started. Let's do as I always do. Let me ask each of you committee members to introduce yourself. We'll start with my right and go clockwise. Tell us your name, what you do, what you look forward to learning about today. And that's basically it. So let's start over here.
Hello, my name is Vicky Martinez. I'm a parent of 3 current LAUSD students, and I look forward to hearing how amazing community schools are.
Hi, my name is Cecily Feltham Hammond. I was so excited to get the agenda and see that it was about community schools. I taught for 8 years, and that's this movement, right, as you're talking to like applying success to a broader group. I find like educators take so much on their shoulders. So I'd love to hear, and I'm so excited about what you do to say, hey, let's approach it as a team. And I have 2 kids, one at Irving Middle School and one at Gala.
All right, let's start over. Oh, no, we were going clockwise, so that would you be next. There we go. I'll get this right.
Hi, everyone. I'm Lourdes Ramirez Ortiz. I'm the Administrator of Instruction at Region East, and I'm really looking forward to learning more about how we can support our schools that are interested in going through the process.
Good afternoon. I'm Denise Harper. I'm from Vista Middle School. I'm an inclusion co-teacher, and I am very excited about learning more about the implementation process and getting more schools in my area involved in the program.
Good afternoon. I'm David Metz, and I'm a theater teacher at Santee Education Complex. I, like everyone here, am interested in learning what the state of affairs is with the process of rolling out community schools.
Very good. All right, and of course, I'll have you introduce yourself, but we all know who you are, Dr. Bias, and then take us away.
Wonderful. Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Dr. Frances Baez, the Chief Academic Officer in LA Unified. I welcome the committee members here today and thank you for your participation. I'm looking forward to hearing your questions and I'm looking forward to the discussion ahead today. So, to the viewing audience and to everyone here today, it is a pleasure to present the update on the Supporting Meaningful Teaching and Learning Resolution. The Community School Initiative is continuing in LAUSD with the growing number of schools participating. Every year, our committee continues to select schools that are participating as community schools. In LAUSD, real-world application is one of our foci. We encourage problem-based learning and inquiry. The resolution calls for many of the features we currently have in our district, like career pathways, project-based learning, authentic assessments, artificial intelligence. The goal of this resolution is to scale up effective practices. In the Division of Instruction, we have unpacked the Learning Policy Institute's report called Reimagining Education, Transforming High School for Powerful Learning, and we are curating a menu of successful strategies for schools to consider that will engage students and empower teachers. Through this initiative, we hope to meaningfully engage in the process of learning how to develop authentic assessments and project-based learning. This will build capacity in our educators to collaborate and implement practices that will lead to students being ready for the world. And now I'd like to introduce Cora Watkins and the team who will be presenting on the update on this resolution. Take it away, Cora.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Cora Watkins. I'm currently serving as the director of the Community Schools Initiative. And thank you, President Goldberg, for A, the resolution, and B, for having us here today. We are really excited because this is a very big collaborative effort. So the people with me today are our Community School Steering Committee co-chair, Maria Miranda, who also in her spare time is Vice President Elementary for UTLA. We're her full-time job, and then she has another. And we also have with us Marisa Sanders, a researcher with UCLA Community Schooling Project, and also a member of the State Technical Assistance Center, which is where they support us in our grant. We also have Susan Kanhura, Director of Linked Learning, with us here today, and Hannah Jorvosky, who is our UTLA Community School lead in this big initiative, and Aurelia Valdivia, Executive Director of Reclaim Our Schools, Los Angeles.
It's quite a team.
Yeah, and we've been doing a lot of meeting to get to this point, so we're excited to share that with you. Today we'd like to share with you the objective behind the resolution and kind of connect this component to, whoops, I'm sorry, the button is very sensitive, I'm sorry. So we would like to make sure that we connect to what we're already doing, as well as talk about process that we are going to employ to move into the implementation phases of this resolution. So our objective, beyond what you see on the screen, really is to provide support and systems and some discretion for designated community schools related to the inclusion of project-based or community-based learning and to authentic assessments, so that community schools can be Transformative, not just in teaching and learning, but through more transformative teaching and learning become more transformative in terms of joy and engagement, as well as interest holder well-being, community, family, caregivers, students, and staff. So I'm going to ask my colleague, Marisa, to come on up and connect our work to the Community Schools Framework in California.
Good afternoon, everyone. As Cora mentioned, thank you, Cora. I'm Marisa Saunders from the UCLA Center for Community Schooling, where we have the honor of partnering deeply with 2 LAUSD community schools, and we also have the honor currently of serving as a lead partner for the state's Transformational Assistance Center for the California Community Schools Partnership Program. That's the state's historic $4.1 billion investment in community schools. As you all know, LAUSD is a grant recipient of CCSPP. To date, the district is the state's largest grantee, with 61 schools receiving support through CCSPP. Let me change this. There we go. In addition to leading by numbers, the MTL resolution demonstrates how the district is also leading the way in its commitment to fulfill the vision and overarching values of California community schools. So these are the overarching values. And the values highlight community schools as places that, 1, are relationship-centered, 2, where all interest holders, including students and educators, have a voice in shaping the learning environment. 3, importantly, where learning opportunities are rooted in the assets of students, families, educators, and the local community. And 4, where interest holders engage in these ongoing cycles of improvement. And we'd like to say where data is viewed as a flashlight, not a hammer. So the values operationalize the California Community Schools Framework. And you're probably all very familiar with the 4 pillars. We call the California Community Schools Framework, by the way, the 4x4. So we all know the 4 pillars. We've seen it in legislation, they're everywhere. But California went beyond the 4 pillars to highlight the 4 key conditions of learning, the 4 cornerstone commitments, and the 4 proven practices. Basically, what the 4x4 does is center powerful and productive instructional strategies that support motivation, competence, and self-directed learning at the center of the California Community Schools strategy. Teaching and learning that takes place in safe and caring environments and is built on proven practices is part of California Community Schools Framework. So today, we aim to demonstrate how LAUSD's MTL is indeed leading the way in California and across the country through its commitment to community schools as places where the well-being of young people and their families is centered on opportunities for exciting, engaging, and meaningful deeper learning. And with that, I'm going to turn it back over to my colleague, Cora.
Right, so if you keep one mind or one eye on the 4 key conditions for learning, I think that it will come together for you with regards to the pillars established in the strategic plan. So our main focus as schools in LA Unified is to make sure that we promote academic excellence. And the way that we feel that we can best promote that is, that's our call to action, to introduce project-based learning and authentic assessments as the signature practice for this work. One of the best ways for us to go about ensuring that there's impactful, rigorous, standards-based lessons supported by high-quality curricular materials across all content areas is to try to work in an interdisciplinary fashion, and that is exactly what the project-based learning will do. So we took those 4 key conditions for learning and we thought about what do we need to highlight? What would be the difference between a traditional classroom and a community schools classroom? So this slide is showing you 6 areas that we center our professional development, our main work around supporting schools related to productive and innovative strategies, college and career readiness, social emotional learning, culturally relevant and restorative practices, equitable grading and instruction, as well as the community-connected learning. And then if you have a chance to go back to these slides or think about it at a later time, the highlighted words really draw out what we're emphasizing with all of our school leaders, our families, our educators, so that we're really clear that, for example, we believe strongly in career exploration and doing that, for example, via the Paxton Patterson Lab opportunity. So the bold pieces call out a little bit more detail about what sets a community school apart from a traditional classroom. Okay, and Susan is going to talk to us about a company. We started working with Defined Learning, and it was at the recommendation of our Linked Learning colleagues. Defined Learning is currently working with 16 of our schools. They're providing professional development and a electronic platform for students for teachers, to gather curated, standards-based, rigorous, and career-connected lessons that are put together into project-based learning units. As another path, we have the Center for Powerful Public Schools working with 10 additional schools who wanted to use that path as their way moving forward with project-based learning. So as you can see by the slide, we're well into training, and that training will continue over the next year and a half. And we will be having a fair this year that highlights the project-based learning that our educators have designed. All right, Miss Susan.
Yes, thank you. Yes, please note your questions. Yes, so I'm Susan Kanahura, the Director of Linked Learning, and for the past couple of years, Cora and our teams and my Linked Learning team have really been working to align these practices, and there's a lot of interest at the state level in how the practices of linked learning and community schools do align. So the tenets of linked learning are integrated student learning, integrated student supports, and also work-based learning. And as you can see from the pillars of community schools, that there is a lot of alignment with both of these practices. And so the real world learning that Cora mentioned, it does extend to career-based learning, which connects to student and family interest and community interest, and through the community needs assessment can identify, or asset mapping can identify what areas in the community really demand a certain career pathway. And so this also connects students to job potential, and not just careers, and careers are important, and also college-going culture. So we're not saying there's one or the other, but both. And so in LAUSD, we have over 400 CTE pathways and around 80 linked learning pathways, which also embed a CTE pathway in them. And these are in all 15 industry sectors that have been identified federally and by the state of California. And so the pathways that are on the screen that you see are the pathways that are offered at community schools, high schools. So we see a number of the pathways are already offered at community schools. And each of these pathways consists of at least 2 courses. There's a concentrator course and a capstone course. And linked learning pathways have 3 to 4 courses. So there's maybe an introductory course or other career-themed courses. And the reason that we have a pathway, and we don't see these as one-off electives, but as a real pathway so that students can obtain a deep knowledge of that industry pathway and apply their learning in the capstone project. And some of these projects are often community-based, where they're taking a need of the community and seeing how they might solve a community issue or highlight a community strength as well. And so these courses also include work-based learning, which is very important for the development, such as guest speakers, field trips, job shadowing, industry partner feedback on projects, and industry partner feedback to teachers in the development of projects and in the purchasing of relevant equipment and materials that are industry standard aligned, and internships, which is the gold standard of all work-based learning. So we're really trying to have our students reach towards those internships. And then with project-based learning that Cora's also described, portfolios are a means for students to capture their work over time and have revision by both the students and teachers on their work. And so this is one of the alternative measures of student learning that we are considering, is portfolios as a means to do that. And so we have a number of vehicles for portfolio options. One of them is our own platform, Schoology, which does have a feature that students can develop portfolios. Defined Learning that Cora mentioned has a portfolio option. We have another platform called Zello that is K-12 and helps all students learn career awareness to career exploration and then finally to career preparation. We have Google folders where many students are collecting their work. And so here I've also given some examples of the kinds of alternative assessments that are already taking place. One of them is a student portfolio defense. So students have their portfolio. This occurs as early as kindergarten, 5th grade, 8th grade, and 12th grade. And students are able to defend their work, meaning they're explaining what they have learned over a course of time to a panel of other students, perhaps family members, community, and industry partners. And so it can be based, or it is based on academic standards, student outcomes, such as our graduate student profile, which is in our strategic plan and which is used to guide our work. So all of those can be assessed through this student portfolio defense. Then there's also a capstone project, and other districts have these capstone projects because they're part of CTE, but also a senior project that might not be attached to a career technical education course. And that's a comprehensive project that students complete at the end of whatever academic period it is, and then we can use that to assess the student learning. And then finally, there's other performance assessments, and we have used these throughout our district on many different occasions, but essays that are about literature, social studies, research papers, reports on original science experiments or engineering design, narratives of process and solutions of mathematical problem solving, and even performance demonstrations of learning and other performances like in the arts where you can see clearly the demonstration of student outcomes. So these are all some ways that we can have already been using in our district that are alternatives to traditional standardized testing. So now I'm going to turn it back to Cora.
So now we are at the exciting point where AI meets community learning, where we can utilize artificial intelligence to help our students solve real problems in their communities that mean something to them. So we are looking to harness the technology to tackle challenges that students identify, and, for example, solving community challenges with using generative AI. also using AI to collaborate on creating solutions that are creative, where we're blending the human side, the student's own ingenuity, with that of the artificial intelligence. And what you see happening in the pictures are students using VR goggles for trips beyond their classroom so that learning follows the community school way of going beyond the classroom. And also engaging in a lot of dialogue. It's not one student, one computer, all by themselves. So you still see the community aspect of learning as a social process. Students using 3D printers, and we also have a lot of our schools with their students exploring game-based simulations and robotics and the e-learning games. And students working a lot on coding. So it's starting, and now our goal is to make sure that it's robust and that it is something that is occurring for all students at all of our schools. And I believe that we are going to talk about, again, just a brief summary, defined learning we've already started with. More recently, we have been working with Center for Powerful Public Schools, and we have over 70 teachers coming on Saturdays to engage in creating projects, and we are continuing to develop CTE and linked learning pathways, and we're very excited that a community school will probably be the second elementary school. 2 community schools are participating in linked learning as elementary schools, whereas more typically it's a high school endeavor. So we're excited that they are working with our friends in linked learning and CTE to make that happen, starting with our youngest students. All right, and I'd like to introduce Hannah to come on up and help us dig deeper into the resolution itself.
Hi, everyone. My name's Hannah Jarofsky, and I am the new community school lead organizer with UTLA. I'm really excited to be here with all of you. So we're going to now dig into how we're going to begin the implementation process for the resolution. So I'm going to go to the next slide. All right, so I promise you I won't read to you the entirety of the resolution. I wouldn't do that to you all. But I am going to focus on mainly the process that's on the right-hand side of the slides that you see. So to open things up, we're going to be essentially establishing the building blocks to implement the resolution in this first phase. And I just want to mention that all of this, even moving to this presentation, is done collaboratively. We love collaboration in community schools, right? So we'll be collaboratively building a criteria for folks that want to apply. We'll even be building the school application, right? And then we will present that criteria to the community schools, and that will include key stakeholders within those community schools, and they're listed on the slide. Then those applications will be reviewed by our community school steering committee, which is made up of various stakeholders, and then the district will also review those recommendations as well. So again, moving things forward, next thing will happen is our community schools instructional director, Cora, will get that money, right? She will request budget adjustments for approval from the California Department of Education. And so that's the one part of this time. Also, we'll begin defining the role of what a lead teacher is going to be, right? And also just start suggesting guidance to schools on how to select a lead teacher, what should they look for, et cetera, et cetera. And so in this part we'll be in this era, we'll be starting to build professional development to support those lead teachers once they're found and recruited and brought into their new role. So we're going to be doing that by working with the UCLA Center for Community Schooling. We've already heard from one of our leaders there. And we will also be providing training and building curriculum for lead teachers in related to the community-based and project-based learning that we just reviewed earlier on. Also, in addition, we'll be providing and working on curriculum for facilitator and coaching training for lead teachers. All right, so I've been like labeling each of these slides. The title slide for me on here is we want to give schools support to engage all stakeholders, because that's really the most important part of community schools, is engaging all of our stakeholders, making sure that they have a voice. And so this is where we're going to engage our local school leadership councils, and making sure that the school is indeed ready to commit. The local school leadership council is sort of the backbone of the decisions that are made locally at a community school, right? But additionally, we want to make sure that parents and families are engaged in the readiness to commit. And I just want to say these deadlines are subject to change, so don't come find me if we don't meet them. But schools, we're hoping that we will have applications by March of 2025, and then we'll have that full list by May. But again, all subject to change. You heard it from me first. So now I'm going to talk about the 2026-2027 school year, which is just kind of wild that we're already talking about that, but here we are. So this is just sort of how we think about implementation for the next school year, right? So with support of Cora and essentially the team that's sitting here, we're going to engage in an instructional audit review process, and then we'll share results and get input from all of our interest holders, and of course work with all of the regions to think through what's working, what isn't working, and then potentially remodel the instructional program. So now I am going to pass it off to Adelia.
Hi, everybody. My name is Adelia. I'm the director of Reclaim Our Schools LA. All right. So, am I next? Yeah, sorry. Oh, you have to click twice. Okay. So, in the spirit of a collaboration, one of the things that has always been very important is ensuring that we have principal and admin buy-in. So, part of the process is that it's going to be required that we have that the principal and the regional director are in agreement on the schools that have been selected. We also want them to be part of the process of IDing PD opportunities with project-based learning and champions and educators, so that we can make sure that educators have the resources they need to implement this. And all of the instructional resources will be selected and identified by each of the individual school sites, and funded. They will be, all the resources will be selected and funded by each of the individual school sites. And that's, in line with the community schools model. Each school is different. And so what works for one school may be different than what works for another school. All right, next slide. All right, let me look at my notes. All right, so one of the big concerns when we went back and forth on talking about this was the type of assessments. And so there's, based on the findings and recommendations of the subcommittee, then the Division of Instruction is going to work with school site teams to create authentic assessment types, then implement those assessments, then pilot those assessments, and then assess those assessments, assess how effective they're being in regards to students' areas of strength and need, right? So it's not just we're eliminating testing, and hopefully we'll fill it with something else. We're being very intentional about the types of assessments that are going to be replacing standardized testing. And lastly, the Community School Steering Committee and the Division of Instruction is going to be, as part of our process, creating two work teams. One is a selection team that will be helping select the 10 schools that will participate, and the other is the learning, design, and implementation team. Those teams are going to have monthly meetings to develop all of the aspects of implementing the resolution. And that includes the school selection process, which is the application, the rubric, and the selection criteria. So I'm going to walk us through some phases, not a timeline, but phases. So because as Hannah said, everything is flexible here. All right, so phase 1 is planning for selection of schools. So we're going to identify and communicate the criteria for the 10 schools that will be participating. We're going to engage and gather feedback from stakeholders, and then share our expectations and timelines for the schools to be informed and apply, right? We're currently, this is what we're calling phase 1A. We're currently already in the process of phase 1A. There will be some overlap between phase 1A and phase 1B, where we're going to be researching existing best practices both within LAUSD and outside of LAUSD regarding authentic assessments, such as community and project-based learning, interdisciplinary instruction, defense of student learning, et cetera. And you heard some of those examples already. We think that phase B will be a bulk of the work in the 25-26 school year. And then we move on to phase 2. Oh, so many. We're going to be designing a framework tailored to existing work within community schools, ensure that we have a shared understanding of all the terms, implications for teaching and learning, including one of the things that's outlined in the resolution, which is the lead teacher, ensuring that we have a clear understanding of that role. Then we go to phase 3, which is the implementation phase. So we're going to be providing ongoing professional development, coaching, trainings to support successful implementation for each school implementation team. And then we're going to pilot the assessments and utilize PDSA cycles to monitor progress. So there's also going to be some overlap between phase 2 and phase 3. There will be some design work is going to begin in the spring of 2026 and then continue in connection to phase 3, which will be in fall of 2026 or spring 2027. All right, and then finally, phase 4, the evaluation phase. We're going to engage in ongoing evaluation and continuous improvement process to monitor the implementation progress and assess the effectiveness of the assessments at each school site. And we just want to note that these phases are all designed to overlap and build upon each other. And there's going to be continuous assessments, not just during the evaluation phase, but in phase 1B, 2, and 3, to monitor our progress, to gather feedback from stakeholders, and ensure that each stage is examined to understand our evolving needs. And also our suggested time frame for evaluation would be spring of 2028. All right. And with that, now we're going to open it up to questions and discussions. But I just very quickly want to take this moment because I don't know when I will see President Goldberg again, to just thank you on behalf of the members of Reclaim Our Schools LA for all of the work you've done for our students and all of the work that you've done supporting us over the last few years. We really appreciate you and your leadership, so thanks.
Oh, that was a lot in a short time. I think maybe I would have had you go a little slower, but we'll take it back some for some questions now. Let me just say that my first experience with the idea of community schools was not when I came back to the board, it was really before that. I have some friends who I worked with, and we had families together here in Los Angeles, some of whom moved back to their home state of Massachusetts, which has a lot of small community, I don't know what you call them, entities that are like city governments. And one of them took me to a meeting, and at that meeting, students came and presented their answers to problems that they had been given in the beginning of the year by that city council. It was truly amazing. And that's really when I said, well, how did that happen? You know, how do kids from the local, there were 2 high schools, one had one problem, one had the other. One had to do with the drainage on streets during rain, and I don't remember what the other was, but they had the science, they were able to present it, they had graphics, and the members of the city council said, you know, can we hire you? I mean, we've been working on this drainage problem in some parts of this community for years, and you've got some really excellent ideas. And I went up to the teachers at the end, and they said, well, we're community schools. And I said, what the heck is that? And she said to me, we try to make the curriculum based in the world reality, as opposed to something you learn, and that includes even history. I mean, in other words, it doesn't have to be contemporary subjects. And we've been doing this, I asked her for how long, 3 years in the one school. But she said, we thought it was going to be harder because we thought kids would say, well, I don't want to do science on that because I'm not in a science class, but there's science on this project. And I found that the teachers were telling us they were much more willing to explore deeper issues in science because it had relevance to something that was actually happening than that because it was in the curriculum. And that's when I said, well, if I ever do this again, I want to do community schools. Then I found out about a place in Philadelphia that had been doing it, in which part of the community schools was every other week, a portion of the stakeholders would cook dinner for everybody. And everybody would come and they'd have a topic and they'd all eat dinner together. So sometimes it was the teachers, sometimes it was students, sometimes it was administration, classified, but every other week. Well, that's a lot of work. I don't know how you could do that, but I didn't go to any of them, but what they said is that then the parents for the first time, I don't live in Massachusetts, parents for the first time were saying, we believe now that they really think that we have a role to play because we have these meetings. Not everybody comes, but a lot do because it's dinner and you don't have to cook dinner that night. And we just have discussion topics and there's no chairman. They sit in the tables of about 8 people. Anyway, those were things I thought we should be doing, you know. And I know that a lot of them have been doing a long time but I believe to the depths of my soul that this is the future of public education. Because when kids see that what they're learning has some outcome. I mean, I remember all my life asking anybody why I needed Algebra 2. I mean, it's honest to God. I took it. I did well. I don't think I've used a single thing from Algebra 2 in my entire life, yet I couldn't get into a university without passing it. And I kept thinking there's something wrong here. Now, if I'd had a project like that one that involved me using Algebra 2 to solve a problem that was real in the real world, I would have had a much different, you're getting what I'm trying to say. So I thank you for all of this. I won't be here to see it all come to fruition, but I believe really deeply that this is the future of public education because kids have so much access to information that's good and bad information and disinformation on the internet. They're already engaged in, quote, the world in a way I never was in high school, ever. You know, it was something off in the distance. So students are interested in relevancy in the way I really was. I didn't care. When he told me I had to take that to get into college, I'll take that. I'm going to college. This is a different approach. This connects the community to the school, particularly in the Massachusetts case. But, you know, we got a big city in city council. We got city councils in Maywood, Bell, Huntington Park, Southgate, and Cudahy, and San Fernando. Why aren't we saying that one of the things you could do is to go at the beginning of the year in August and ask them if there are problems you would like us to address and we'll see you in May, which is how that started in this group in Massachusetts. So I'm thrilled with this, but now I'm going to let all of you, I never get a chance to say it again, how did this all happen that I became so engaged? It was a couple of little things, and I kept thinking, I've been teaching for 17 years because I was on summer vacation. I don't believe any of my students have ever had any notion how relevant any of this really was until they began to do something with it, with using the information, Anyway, I'm done. I just wanted to share that with you. So now, let's start first with, let's start anywhere. Who has a question or comments on some of this, or do you want to take it piece by piece? Oh, let's start with, if we would, maybe with the academic excellence, which is on page 8. Talk to me a little more about interdisciplinary. Because that's what excited me. So talk to me how we're going to do that here.
I think that it's going to look, I think several of my colleagues said that it's going to look different at each school. So, for example, now with the work that has already begun, some people are trying to integrate 2 subjects together because that's how their day, their schedule works the best. And other people are going for larger projects that include more work. But the idea is that minimally, no matter the main topic and the main problem you're addressing, that you would include reading and writing. And as you all know, the summer was spent on writing instruction. So there's the reading writing connection is going to span through it all, but we are leaving that to the discretion of the teachers, and also seeing as their expertise grows that there would be more and more inclusion of other subjects. Secondary has been a little more not difficult, but it's just a different situation.
We're more than difficult. We are in love with our own subjects, the hell with everybody else. I mean, really.
Sometimes but we have, for example, Monroe High School doing a phenomenal number of teachers are engaged with us in this, and they're trying to work in small clusters just because of the number of prep periods they have and reasons that are beyond their control. So it may be at Audubon, it was science, math, and PE. And other schools, it's other very unique combinations. McAllister School for Pregnant and Parenting Girls is doing some work on trying to bring in to their project-based learning, birth plans, and all of the professionals in the community that are going to support these young women in delivering happy, healthy babies.
Anybody else on this subject of interdisciplinary? No, okay. Go ahead, next question.
Well, on this page, I put planning time. And I think it's so perfect that we talked about you having 2 full-time jobs. And I love that you talk about overlapping, right? Obviously, teachers do everything. And I really love this idea of sitting down to eat food together and to make food together.
Well, I like that one.
And you know what I'm saying? And it's to be present, to be fully present as an educator. You don't want to be thinking, okay, it's so nice to be here with you, and what am I doing tomorrow? And do I have my and do I have the materials? So I think that's my question. I know you mentioned Saturdays, but I'm wondering about the time for intentional planning between teachers where they're not doing anything else. Maybe it's a full half day so they can just focus on getting it right.
So currently, we're addressing it through the good fortune of having the CCSPP grant dollars. Every one of our schools has, depending on the size of the staff, between $50,000 and $150,000 to spend for teachers in teams to engage in collaborative planning work so that it can occur at the time that the teachers are available and they're compensated at their fair rate. Fair wage, and that will go on until the grant funding is gone. But in the meantime, in in addition, we're also trying to help principals look for time during the school day and other ways that teachers can be released. So the collaborative planning time money is definitely our biggest our biggest way to address it right now.
So the only thing I would add is you raise, that question really points to the importance of the community schools teacher lead that we're talking about here. And that person will really provide the supports to teachers in their classrooms to do this type of instruction. So it's not on top of, it's a different way of doing with support on campus.
Hi, I'm wondering about the data that gets collected from these pilots. And I'm sure there's a lot of innovation that can come from it. I'm just wondering how it's going to be disseminated, how teachers like me could maybe borrow some of these innovations. Is there going to be a repository? How are we going to disseminate that?
We are still working on the repository component of it. Right now, we're trying it actually through Schoology and uploading lessons there. But as we get deeper into this with the 10 schools, one of our tasks will be to think of a more district-wide or openly accessible so that teachers at other schools do have the access.
I wanted to add that we do already have a repository of some projects that our teachers have developed that are in the Link Learning program that are interdisciplinary. And so I think I'm glad you raised that point because thinking of how we can share those with beyond, the community schools too, because we are working on that. And I did want to make a point about an earlier question about the interdisciplinary and the time, how can teachers have time? And so another thing to explore and that we're working on too with Link Learning, and we do have right now 7, I believe it's 7 schools that are community schools and Link Learning also. And so so some of them have been doing this, like at Miguel Contreras, there are a couple of pathways that have been working. One is gold certified in Link Learning, and so they've been working on these projects and business plans and pitching them to business partners and doing some incredible work for several years. But we're really working on master scheduling too, and helping counselors and administrators to understand the need for cohorting of students, because that's what makes projects possible. And to even, dare I mention, common conference periods, which can be very useful too for teachers to have time to plan during the school day and not to rely only on after school and Saturdays, which is, is difficult. So that's one thing that we're, I think, to really work on more.
Go ahead.
So right now, students can go through e-choices with magnets. Are community schools going to be available through e-choices so students can select these kinds of interdisciplinary curriculum for themselves, or are they just going to happen to be at a school that's selected and that's the luck of the draw?
Many of our schools have open enrollment, so they are open to students outside of their residential boundaries. At this time, we are not yet in the e-choices, but we are looking into that option.
And how do students find out about these programs then?
Our schools have done an incredible amount of networking with the schools in their proximity, by and large, the feeders, and they are trying to make sure that the good work they do is displayed at public events and parks and through other community-based communication modes.
And
We are a partner of Carver Community School, and so we've helped Carver and actually 93rd Street Community School do community walks where we actually go with members of the school out into the surrounding neighborhoods and talk about what the school offers, the programs and resources, not just for the students, but also for the community. And so a number of schools do community walks outside of those two, but those are just two that have partnered with Reclaim in that process. So.
And then last point, I think, that it's the flip side of that, that the goal is to create curriculum that is tailored to the strengths, assets, and the needs of that local community. So oftentimes, the needs and assets assessment, which is a core part of the community school strategy, that data, that humanizing data that is collected is used by teachers and incorporated into their classroom to create curriculum that meets the local needs and interests of that community. So I don't know if that answers your question, but
I'm thinking more about like the student that is looking for this kind of a challenge, that embraces this idea of interdisciplinary. How does that kid find their way into a program at one of the schools so they can experience that?
yeah, well, the hope is that it is their local school. It is meeting.
But if there's only 10, that's going to be...
Currently, the idea is to grow this.
And my second question was, what accommodations have you put in place for students with IEPs to be part of these interdisciplinary programs?
So their accommodations and or modifications are going to be applied as if they were doing any other study or assessment. What we do not yet know is how does that potentially affect, or what's the impact of accommodations on authentic assessments. So as my colleagues mentioned, we have a lot of research that we need to do related to good practices, best practices with authentic assessment, and that will be a component that needs a lot of careful research.
I'm glad you raised that because it's something that I've thought about and wondered how you're going to deal with, but I think your answer is very encouraging. I had another question about a suggestion. I think that I spent 18 years in the classroom in 2 states and in 3 school districts, but only my very, very last year in teaching did I team teach. Okay, cross-disciplinary team. I loved it. I loved it, you know. He was teaching them, what's the book about the kids turning pretty wild when they got abandoned on a Lord of the Flies? He's teaching Lord of the Flies while I'm doing Locke and Rousseau, okay? So when we asked our questions, we asked them to take a look at these folks and say, well, what would they have said about this? Would they have predicted that this would be out? I've never seen anything like a conference, and this was all ESL. We were an ESL group. So these are second language learners. And I was very impressed with the fact that because we were doing things interdisciplinary, the kids were more willing to engage. And I had thought it might be just the opposite. Well, you're my government teacher and you're my English teacher. So I would just also encourage as a strategy to get more subject matter teachers in these 10 schools to try interdisciplinary teaching if they haven't. Because I was afraid. I really was. I thought, oh boy, he's going to tell me that he's not going to do this, and we're not going to agree on what should be on the exams, or even if there should be exam. You know, I mean, I had my little fiefdom in my classroom, and that's hard to give up. So I would say, I would really encourage that, because after that experience, if I were to have stayed in teaching instead of ending up in politics, I would have insisted on being in a team teaching situation, even though I had been very afraid of losing control of my classroom and my curriculum. So I would really encourage that. The other thing I would encourage is speech, not just reading and writing, speaking. Because what impressed me probably the most in Massachusetts were the eloquence of these kids and the materials that they brought to explain what they were doing. Very impressive, very impressive. And I'm sure somebody worked on that with their speaking, not just their reading and writing.
I'm really glad that you mentioned that, because that is what one of the authentic assessments that we're talking about, our alternative assessments, is presentations of learning and the senior and 8th grade defense, so those are culminating activities, but along the way for students to have multiple opportunities to present their work. And so I think some of the pathways that we've been working on, and they are doing interdisciplinary teaching. Back in the day, I was a teacher with Humanitas, and
yes.
which I loved, because that was,
yes.
I was working as an English teacher with a social studies teacher and an
Right,
art
right.
teacher, and we created, units and projects together. So this is definitely not a new idea, but I think that our students that we see and engaged in this kind of assessment are getting multiple opportunities to practice speaking, which is very valuable.
Do you intend, and this is to all of you, to assess from the stakeholders what they think is already working and what needs to be improved in their community schools before you start this? That's already on the calendar to do?
That has been discussed in a couple of our subcommittee meetings, looking at finding out how do students feel they can best express themselves, how do parents feel their child best expresses themselves, and what are the other ways in which we could expand that in a way that parents and students would feel open to doing, as opposed to feeling like it's a method that shuts them out of being able to show what they know and can do.
Okay, others, go ahead.
I forgot to mention before the comment about data is a flashlight, viewed as a flashlight instead of that's brilliant, and I love it, and I'm taking that with me. But my other question is, when you're going into the schools and getting them started and everything, you're looking at the entire school doing this, or cohorts within the school doing it? What's...
The ideal would be that these are schools that go across the campus. They become wall-to-wall, project-based learning schools.
Okay.
Right now, where we're starting prior to the pilot is cohorts within. So that's still something that our subcommittee has to think about and figure out what the best combination of all worlds is. Some of our schools are very large, but we also have some that have literally one class per grade level. So it's going to look different in different schools.
So are you using some of the structures from the magnet systems that are set up? Where kids are in a pathway already, given the idea that that might be something they want in terms of a career or, moving forward. Does that fit in?
Yeah, as Susan said, it fits in very well if they're a school that has established CTE pathway, linked learning pathway.
Okay.
Yes, it does really work well with some of the magnet programs that already have an identified theme, and then it works very well with those. But we do have schools that within a large school, like some cohorts or some pathways within the school that are engaged in this kind of learning and trying to spread it throughout the whole school. Mm-hmm.
Now, these schools have committed to 3 years, right, a minimum, the administration when they get selected. Because that was one of my ideas, because I've seen things tried, and after a year, we say, well, it's not working, we quit. I don't think anything works in a year, not that I've experienced. That's new, that's engaging, that's different. So do you think 3 years is enough to get a real feel about whether this is something we should keep pursuing, or should I have been worse and said it 5 years or whatever? Should have been more? Okay. I worried about that.
Yeah, I would have been all behind 5.
Okay.
But 3 is a really good start.
Okay.
And I think these schools are going to commit to this work beyond the 3.
Go ahead.
I have some questions regarding the alternate assessments. So it's my guess that alternate assessments could easily be superior to standardized tests. But how will you know that when it happens? And then what if the data shows that maybe they are more effective at assessing student knowledge? How can you scale that up meaningfully, given that the limitations, the reason why we're doing standardized tests is not because they're effective, it's because they're easy. It's easy to give every kid the same thing, right? So let's say we figure out that I think a lot of people already know there's a better way. How could we manage that and scale up?
I want to hear this answer.
Well, I'm gonna take a stab at it. There are states that are committed to performance assessment statewide.
Really, who?
I think Rhode Island. New York has a body within it focused just on performance assessment. There are some really good examples out there. Finland,
So we wouldn't
a
be
country,
inventing
does
from
it.
scratch. We wouldn't be
Nope,
inventing from scratch.
no. But it's a really good question, and a lot of folks are trying to respond to that question because I think the data is out there that this is a really good way to measure what matters. Yet the scale question is a good one, but we do have some really good models out there.
Yeah, but I think this district is bigger than Rhode Island.
Yeah.
So, no, but I mean, scale is an issue.
Absolutely.
But I think that's part of the why we're looking at 3 years of having that evaluation piece that Aurelia brought out. We need to evaluate outcomes as well as implementation. So at that point, if our data is showing what we believe it will show, then we have that to present to our board and to our superintendent, and then work on the scalability. Because while there's only 10 schools in this particular pilot, there will be minimally 70 other schools in the Community Schools Initiative that are working on some degree of project-based learning. So we have a couple of good places to gather data from, and hopefully that's what we can use to scale up to a larger size.
Excellent.
If I could just follow up, and
right ahead.
how will you know that the assessments are more effective then? Like, what will be the metric that you will know this is better, or this whatever alternative assessment that we've designed is more effective than standardized tests? How will you know that?
What does the timeline say? Can you ask us that in 2027? We're going to be all over that answer.
It would be an honor to serve that long.
In 2027.
But there's going to be multiple ways to answer that question. And we're going to have a number of responses in 2027, one being longitudinal data.
Right.
So understanding the long-term, the trajectories of our graduates, I think is a really important way to measure our success.
I think also attendance.
Absolutely.
Because the people that I talked to in Massachusetts said their attendance grew dramatically. It wasn't COVID-related, this was before COVID, but their attendance had improved, particularly with kids who were seemingly able to do the work in school but didn't seem to be interested in school, that it created interest. So that would be a measure I would want you to track, is are we getting kids who are more engaged when they come to school, or maybe more kids coming to school? I can imagine if I was in a high school and someone told me I could tell the city council of my city how to do something they didn't know how to do, I think I'd find that pretty an interesting task, even if I'm not math science oriented.
One of our neighbors to the south, district to the south, all their students have to complete capstone projects. And their local university, UCI, uses that capstone data. It's part of their holistic review. They have tracked the persistence of their graduates or their students from this particular district. Those students persist at higher rates than other students in the.
Go ahead.
That is really good data. That's a nice way to assess what's most effective. Yeah. So it was just a comment. I was just going to mention that community asset mapping, and then identifying that gap analysis, and then taking off with a real world applicable solution. And then now the artificial intelligence, weaving that in. I mean, really, our kids are going to not only be excited about coming to school every day and learning, but really weaving possibly a future career. And so I'm really excited to learn more about that and see it in action.
Go ahead.
So you mentioned AI briefly, and it's part of this as well. And as a parent, I've been reading a lot of this AI debacle that we are in, LAUSD. Do you foresee any issues with that as far as community schools is concerned? And do you have,
Yeah, so we have an artificial intelligence policy. We developed a task force in LAUSD, and for about a year, we had technologists and a number of other stakeholders who supported us in developing a policy for the use of AI. And we also have digital citizenship courses that students need to complete in order to have access to artificial intelligence. We provided professional development to teachers as well so that they understand how to use the current tools that are in our apps, and showed them how to differentiate learning. And that's been one of the helpful ways. How to lesson plan with it, because AI is very helpful in developing lesson plans, developing images, and lots of ways to engage our English learners if they need some assistance with language. So the training, the policy, and we've also done parent workshops in the parent academies on this, and we're happy to continue because we're not done. We've just scratching the surface in terms of our school communities having access to understanding artificial intelligence. But our students need to be able to pass these courses, the digital citizenship, and it's not a lengthy course, it's just really being responsible users of AI and how to create those prompts that go into AI. So, and also, we have a lot of experience already now because it's growing so fast. So the fact that community schools will be using it, there are current employees who've been trained already. There are students who've been trained. AI is only available for students ages 13 and above. So that's really who will have access to it. So the way the district is rolling out AI is the way that community schools will be rolling it out.
While we're on AI, we did see, I was taken to a school district nearby, probably the one you're referring to, that uses AI, and the gentleman who invented the particular AI for that particular district said that he would like to know if any of our schools would like to use his system. Is that a possibility for a school to use their budget to hire, not just him, but some AI firm that, not just district-wide, but just for that school?
We have a lot of, there would be multiple steps for us to check through with acceptable use policies.
So with respect to an AI, we would definitely need to vet it, go through an RFP process, curate it, go through the bench, have board approval. And yes, community schools would be able to purchase a particular product if once it's been vetted and approved.
Well, I know that the one that was the district that I went and visited has been approved here as a vendor. So does that mean that they could now just, if they could afford it, hire them? Okay. I think because what I saw with that demonstration was quite impressive, particularly as to, because I'm a teacher, lesson planning. They would ask the AI how to incorporate this and that and this and that with the curriculum that I'm using, and it would print out various methods that you could use, plus some sample lesson plans. See, I think we could get a whole lot of people to buy in when they're giving you the sample lesson plans. No, but I mean, seriously, when you go into a new area, what's the thing you most have to do? You have to spend hours and hours and hours and hours figuring out what you're going to teach in that new area and how you're going to teach it, and if you do have the right information and materials. The other thing I saw, which impressed me, was their chat. The chat, the student was told to write a 5-paragraph essay about, I think it was a civil rights leader. It was a person. And I was afraid what they were going to do is see a 5-paragraph essay, because you can do that. No. It says in your first paragraph, you might want to look, and then it had links to resources, to look at these places to see if there are things you need to include in that first paragraph, because the first paragraph should be about. In the second paragraph, here are different links. In the third paragraph, your teacher has the best source for that. And what it was guiding the student on what research to do, where to get, didn't have to try to figure it out, didn't Google it and hope to get something that was telling them the truth as opposed to disinformation, because these were things already vetted as actual. So I think that AI may also be a very big part of this, but carefully. I mean, we want to make sure that it's not writing the papers, because you can do that. You can do that. You can say, I want to write a 5-page paper on this, and you'll get one. And that's what we don't want. Go ahead.
So I have a family member that's going to UC Davis now, and he was telling me that they have an AI policy that's in their syllabus, and it says that you can use it. But they have a way of isolating the student and saying, okay, so what did you use AI for? And so it's sort of like defending your dissertation in a way, like, okay, so what's your thinking, what's the framework? And I think it's important for educators to start thinking that way, because I got to administer the digital citizenship module today to my students, and I was kind of giving my own spin on things. I'm also an Apple Learning coach. And by the way, my principal was kind enough to authorize the acquisition of 50 iPads with an M1 chip. And next month, they're going to also all be updated with Apple Intelligence. So there's all kinds of interesting things going on there. And kids are so engaged by it. Not to say that it's just the new gimmick. It's like there's a way of making learning more meaningful. And let's be honest, in the future, what are the jobs going to be asking people to do? Not the same things, right? So we got to be able to think about, you have basically an army of assistants working for you now. What are you going to do with that?
Go ahead. That's why we're here.
So
I didn't come to watch
I
you,
was
I come to
recently
hear.
at a tips and tricks on Schoology, and one of the things they brought up was their AI component within Schoology now. There's a teacher component and there's a student component, and we don't currently have access to it at my school. And so I'm trying to investigate it further and keep kind of, it has to be turned on. It's free. But it was very encouraging of how they're using AI within the framework of Schoology, which is a protected environment for students, but also giving them that creative license to think beyond where they are right now. So I'm very encouraged. And just to let you know that I hadn't taught math in a lot of years. I've been a history teacher for many, many years.
Me too.
I have used AI extensively to support my own learning, so that I can be a better math teacher now. It comes back to you, but it comes back a little differently.
Yeah, well, it looks a little differently, too. All right. Well, let me just say, what do you think are the next steps, the very next steps? So that, because we'll have a different chair, but this committee will continue. And they're going to want to have you to come back and say, we told you in the last meeting these were the next steps, and they may invite you back to say, how did that go? So what are the next steps that they should be talking to you about probably next year?
I mean, the immediate next steps is that we are in the process, our subcommittee is in the process of developing the criteria, putting and sharing that criteria with the existing community schools so that they can begin the application process, apply, and then we're also going to be sharing the rubric that we're going to be using in order to select those schools. So I don't know if the board or the committee wants us to check in during that process, but that's the immediate next step, is developing that so we can the criteria for application and also how they're going to be scored. We have an existing rubric that we use for selection of community schools. We will need to develop a rubric for the selection of these 10 schools.
Do you think before the end of 24, 25, you'll have the schools selected?
That is our hope.
Okay, so that would be next steps, is to criteria and
June.
scoring,
Yeah.
and then actually selection.
Yeah. Sorry, my brain couldn't calculate those dates in my head, but yes, our goal is by this coming summer, which is
Okay.
the end of the school year, yeah.
And in 25, 26, what would be maybe the first step that you would have? You've now selected the schools, so if you were asked to come back, you would want to come back when you've done...
Our lead teacher selection is the next big step. The criteria, the job description, the selection advice to the schools, and then within that, probably that same year, beginning the training for the school team and simultaneously the subcommittee researching the authentic assessment piece as well as the project-based learning piece of it.
Okay. Well, that gives me a good idea and something to leave to whoever chairs this committee next. I want to thank all of you very much for doing this because for me, you know, as I told you at the beginning, this has been a passion of mine. And to see that you are already and so engaged in how to figure out to actually make an idea be implemented makes me very, very happy. And I want to thank all of you very much. I also want to thank all of, that's why I love this committee. The kinds of questions and issues you raise are the relevant ones, and you come at it from the different points of view of what you are already doing. And I really appreciate that. I also want to thank my staff, Fidencio Gallardo. I want to thank General Counsel, who is here, Mr. Vin. And who's doing the, somebody's recording this, and you can see it at lausd.net/CIC, okay? We have one speaker, so I'm going to call on them next, but thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Really, I'll applaud. There you go.
We have just one speaker today. That's Mr. Juan Magandi. Come on up, Mr. Magandi.
Yep.
You'll have 2 minutes to speak once you begin.
And if you're like me,
And Mr. Magandi will be speaking in Spanish, so if you'd like to hear what he's saying in English.
Thank you. I like it.
Bueno, no quería venir, pero como soy terco, ¿no?
I didn't want to come
parece
here,
ser-
but I'm stubborn, right? This is we're in what's called the UTLA group of friends. No, all these community schools. I don't see parents. What type of workshops? What are information? I don't see that. A workshop. Do you know something? When I was chairperson of the parents, I presented. Oh, there's Miss Baez, the person we've talked to some projects and programs that were successful that could have worked, but that didn't happen. Like you said, Miss Baez, that the use of phones in the schools would take away the attention and the focus of the students, but now that but today we're going to suspend the phones. This is the problem. And the other thing I think is that these programs and projects that I told you were multidisciplinary. When did you support them, Miss Baez? Never. And now we're here to create here that we want to create a series of projects that are multidisciplinary. And we're taking the kids, and we don't need artificial intelligence. We have 3 AIs, 3 parallel roads. How do you see the reality? How do you see as parents? You teachers, how do you see the reality, and how us parents and in poverty, that's the contact with reality. So the question is this what is next and what is to come? Because now the next step is ask so that they can keep using the district facilities so that they can use 10 people and every half an hour ask for a break of another 15 minutes. This isn't advancing or progressing. And this is what I'm saying. There's no forms to progress. We're doing more of the same, and we're just doing runarounds because we're using UTLA and their friends. There are a bunch of organizations that don't do community work. They take advantage of us poor people for their own privileges, and we're not advancing in material social advances or
Thank you for your
Latino
time.
communities. Thank you.
Not yet,
I
not
will
yet.
miss all of you.
One more item.
I think someone wants to say a few words.
Before we adjourn, Board Member Goldberg, we all have a message for you. I want to express our appreciation and thank you for your many years of leadership and for guiding us in every way. Just recently, my husband was showing me his graduation diploma, and it had your signature on it. And so you've impacted our lives in so many ways. I've looked up to you so much as a role model, and your legacy will continue and live on for many, many decades to come and generations to come. But the group here, our committee, wants to say a few words, so I'll start with Mr. Metz.
What's there to say after all these years? It's, I remember first hearing you speak in the pouring rain at one of your campaign events at a park. And there was just so full of people. Anyway, everyone was grinning ear to ear despite the weather, and we just had so much faith in you, and you did not disappoint. You inspired all of us and continue to do so. Thank you.
I got to know you on this committee, and I have so enjoyed working with you these last few years. It's so nice to see a fellow historian who has been so engaged in all of the disciplines, even outside of history, and I really appreciate that and respect that. Thank you so much.
It's been such a pleasure to work with you in so many capacities, but every time you bring something to our attention, you ask us a question, you really help us to think deeply, and it's always centered around what's best for kids, and I've always admired that, and I deeply respect it, and I will always remember that about you.
Such a human, Jackie, and you love humans, and you fight for humans and all of us. And it's so cute because I think of campaign events, and whenever I hear the Lindas, I think of you and how you just bring people together and that you make things real. You say, how are we really going to do this so that it impacts teachers and the students they work with? So we're so appreciative.
I want to thank you for coming out of retirement to help us and the students that really needed your help. As a parent of BD5 at the time when you came, I really, really appreciate for that support. I also want to point out that you have given the LGBTQ plus students, the community, a voice, and I really appreciate that as a mother as well. I think that's important, and they need to be seen, and I'm glad that they saw themselves in a board member and the president.
Thank you. Very cautious in these next 4 years about our LGBTQ students and faculty and teachers and classified, because these people are really nuts. I mean that. It's not like I disagree with them politically. They're nuts, and they intend real harm. They intend real harm. And let me just give you one tiny little example, okay? The whole bit of one of the campaigns talked about trans students and making sure that trans students never play athletics. And I asked someone to research for me, do you know how many trans students in the United States of America have tried to play a sport in high school other than the gender they were born in? 7. 7. They raised it like in every school, in every community, everywhere you are, people are fighting about this. There were 7 trans students during the time he was talking about banning them from playing on a team that they weren't in their birth generated to. 7. So we're not talking about trying to make a real point. We're trying to talk about encouraging people to divide against and fight against one another. Not in this district. We're not going to let that happen.
Well, I want to present a small little token of this orchid, and I know that these orchids will continue to grow because you're such a loving, kind, and wonderful, nurturing individual, and these will blossom many, many times in your lifetime. So,
well, I will tell you that I kill plants. Not on purpose, not on purpose. I over and under one, but my wife has a green thumb. So this one will live. I will not be in charge of it. No, it is true. I don't know. I tend to overwater, underwater, you know what I mean? I don't know. I'm going to read this. Relax, enjoy the ride, try something new, imagine the possibilities, remind yourself to play, expect adventures, make new plans, entertain a few wild ideas. I've got that already. Nap without guilt. That'll take some practice. Take time just for you. Oh, and it's signed by all of you. I'm not going to read this now. Congratulations on your retirement. I will tell you that this has been a very meaningful return to being on the board. I'm glad I did it, but I will say at 80 years old, I had my 80th birthday on Monday. It is time to have new leadership, and we're going to have good new leadership in this district. I'm very pleased personally with the results of the elections. Thank you all. Thank you all. I have enjoyed this. And I particularly have enjoyed you. You know that. Oh, hold it. Let's take a picture.
how do you want this?